Right, so we've got our brand all configured and our business settings set, so we're ready to go. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add some payment gateway. Now, one thing that's important to explain is the way that currencies work in Upmind is they get enabled once there is a payment method associated with the currency. So settings on the left here, and then payment providers. Here is where we add payment providers. Already, by default, we create an example method called offline payment. This is so that you can add a manual payment, or the client can say they want to pay offline. We could toggle this off. Let's go add payment provider, and we'll add Stripe. Stripe's a very popular card payment provider. You can sign up for it. What I've done is I've just created a brand new account here, and we'll add some test credentials just to show exactly how you would do it. So the customer doesn't need to know that they're paying by Stripe. The customer can just think credit or debit card. The same for any other payment providers. Test mode, I'm going to say yes because I've got test credentials. API key, right. This is my new Stripe account. I've just created one for Delamos hosting. I've not gone through any of their activate payments, but if I go to developers and then I go to API keys, I'm hoping this will load. There we go. So copy this, click to copy. Then back here, API key yes, and I'm gonna say yes. Stored means are the card details stored on the system. The reason you want those card details stored, and by the way, it's not card details, it's a token that references the card, is it means that you can charge them automatically. Test credentials, successful authentication. What currencies do I want to take? I want to take pounds, I want to take Canadian dollars, I want to take euros, and I want to take Polish zloty, I believe. Correct. Okay, so now we have our payment gateway added. That's all we need to do. So now we can go ahead, add a product, and those people can pay. People will be able to pay using those card data. To give you an example, if I add a client here and I call them Brian Jones, and then I went to billing and then payment methods. Here I could add a card using this Stripe, using credit or debit card. Similarly, if I logged in as them, and it looks like my pop-ups are being blocked, but there we go, it works now. If I logged in as Brian Jones and went to billing, payment methods, here he could add one. He could also add account credit using that credit debit card. One thing while we're here, I just want to show you, obviously adding that account credit is something that clients can do. One of the options that we have in the back end is that you can say that people can't add account credit until they've got a successful order. What you want to avoid, or what some people want to avoid, is someone testing credit cards to see if they work. And sometimes they do that by creating an account and then just adding payments. You can do that, I believe, under payment options. Disable top up for clients without active orders. Save. Seeing as we're here, even though this is now quite advanced, let's just run through this page of payment options. Almost all of them, you can leave them exactly as they are, but it's probably useful me just talking through what all the options mean. Payment capture mode, direct capture or authorize. What this allows you to do is direct capture, captures a payment immediately as soon as an order is placed. Authorize, automatically pre-auths them, but then doesn't capture the payment until 3 days later. That means if the order is cancelled, you're not actually charging their card. Partial payments for clients, if that's enabled, it allows someone to go to an invoice and say, I don't want to pay the full amount, I just want to pay a smaller amount. Statement description is on someone's credit card. We can define what shows. Not all payment gateways allow it. Obviously, it comes down to the payment gateway options to say what's described, but for example, Stripe allows us to pass this description. Billing automation. This usually happens on invoices that are auto-charged or can be auto-charged to cards. So let's say someone places an order and they have a card on file. Either they could then pay it themselves manually or the system can automatically try and charge. So for example, this option, maps authorization capture attempts, means how many times we will try to automatically capture the card. Invoice charge attempt intervals, how many days in between charges should we leave it? Max invoice charge attempts is how many times we actually charge it. Sorry, authorization is how many times should we try and authorize it before. You see this option at the top. Days notice before card expiry notification. How many days before a card that we've got on file expires should we send them the notification that says they've got a card coming up to expired? Attempt other saved card on failed payments. This means if they've got, let's say, 3 cards on file and the first one fails, but they've got an invoice due, should we then try the next one and then the next one? What category of invoice should we auto charge? So recurring invoices for a renewal, initial invoice is a new order, a migration is an upgrade or a downgrade sometimes, or some change in a service. One time is a one-time order, and a consolidation is if someone's bulk paying for invoices. How many days before an invoice is due should we attempt the first charge? You might want to set this to 0 to be on the due date, or you might want to set it in advance. So charge interval before due date with pending payments. So these are for gateways where the payment is not instant. So a good example is go cardless for direct debits. There, we do a charge, but it may take a while for the charge to happen. So here we set it to 7. So that means if someone's paying by direct debit, we'll attempt the charge 7 days before the invoice is due. That gives the payment time to complete, and we'll set the payment to pending. Max days to attempt payment after charge date. So how long after the charge date in an imported invoice, so this is quite obscure. So when an invoice is imported from an external system, for example, if we're using our import to WHMCS, how overdue does the invoice need to be before we don't auto charge? So if something was already 7 days overdue, for example, here we wouldn't try and do an auto charge, but if it was only 2 days overdue, we would. Payment days term priority. So if someone orders a number of products and one of those products says that it needs to be paid a certain number of days before it's due, and all those things are bulked together on one invoice, what days shall be taken as the payment deadline? As I said when I talked earlier about options, it can get pretty obscure. Expiration notices, how many days or what days before something expires should you send the automatic expiration notice? Client wallet, can someone hold a multi-currency balance, or should they just have one balance in their client wallet when they top up, for example? If an invoice is due, should it use their wallet balance, or should it just let their wallet balance sit and let someone pay it manually? And then finally, disable top up for clients with active orders. That's just the option we had about disabling a top up. Those are payment options. That's pretty exhaustive. That's more detail than I wanted to go into about payments, but hopefully you've seen the most important thing there is setting up a payment provider.